this afternoon, massive corruption at the DVLA has been unveiled as the latest investigation conducted by Corruption Watch shows some officials accepting cash to help driver's license applicants bypass the mandatory tests to acquire a license. By law, license applicants are expected to take a compulsory 48-hour training with a DVLA-accredited driving school and also to sit for computer-based written exams. And the investigation showed that some staff of the licensing authority accept cash and either waive the tests or get other people to sit the tests for the applicants. Here are some excerpts of that investigation by Francisca Enchil. Ghana, road accidents account for many deaths each year. According to the Motor Traffic and Transport Department of the Ghana Police Service, between January and November this year, 13,675 road crashes were documented in Ghana. These crashes resulted in 2,171 deaths, while 14,239 were injured. Some of the major causes of these road accidents are the increasing incidence of wrongful overtaking and overspeeding due partly to the incompetence of drivers. Kwame Kodua Itiahene is the head of Regulation, Inspection and Compliance at the National Road Safety Authority. He explains that some of the fraudulent ways of acquiring a driver's license are disturbing. According to him, driving is a risky activity which requires validated expertise.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you look at the law, there are three key conditions. You must pass a theory test, you must pass an in-traffic test, you must pass a physical fitness test. So these are three issues, conditions that the licensing authority will normally look out for. A deficit on any one of the three does not give comfort for the sort of task that is required of you. If you are not physically fit, you may have the skill to drive, but you don't have the knowledge. The knowledge would require that you have a sense of how to be safe in a road safety environment or in a road. But your ability to move a vehicle forward and backwards does not qualify you as a good driver.
Ghana Private Road Transport Union attributes the carnage on our roads to unqualified drivers, some of whom have no idea about the different requirements for obtaining licenses to operate saloon cars as opposed to large trucks. Following the introduction of new reforms in 2012 and 2014 to curb the rot in acquisition of driver's licenses, Corruption Watch's investigative journalist Francisca Enchil set out to investigate the DVLA's reformed processes. The investigation was carried out in two regions: the Greater Accra Regional Office located at 37 in Accra and the Tamale Regional Office in the Northern Region. By law, the DVLA has specific requirements that all applicants must meet before becoming licensed drivers. However, this investigation captured several DVLA officials and their agents, as well as security men, soliciting money to circumvent the official mandatory requirements in total disregard for the danger their actions pose to human lives. Applicants at the 37 and Tamale DVLA offices who meet the illicit cost of between 1,200 and 1,800 Ghana cedis, which is more than 100% of the official cost, avoid the mandatory 48-hour driving school enrollment requirement, computerized examination, in-traffic driving test, and the road sign test to become licensed drivers without ever demonstrating whether or not they even know how to drive. The officials even aid applicants with eye problems to pass the mandatory eye test instead of allowing the natural process, which will refer applicants with eye problems to specialists for solutions.
So what if I have an eye problem?
They will charge you. So you are the one claiming that. It's more or less like him. So since we make sure all these things.
In 2014, DVLA introduced the mandatory 48 driving hours or 10 working days driving school training requirement as the first step in acquiring a license. However, at the DVLA's 37 office, this investigation established that contrary to the law, the entire mandatory knowledge acquisition at a driving school has been reduced to a mere illegal purchase of a reference number from staff.
325 for the first stage and 150 cedis for driving school slots.
Driving school slot, okay.
That is what we are going to use to get to an exact rate.
You buy a driving school. I come for a driving school.
No.
So you buy a driving school. You can provide one for you. Like you can go and get. You go to a driving school. Driving school.
Driving school. Oh, okay.
That's what you need to apply for. Okay. So either you can get this or you like to go to a driving school and get it. Okay. So we sell it here for 200 cedis. Outside it's all for 2.
Okay.
But we sell it for 200 cedis.
The investigator, after learning that the driving school reference number was on sale at varying rates of 150 to 200 Ghana cedis, identified the premium office as one of the hotspots for these unauthorized arrangements. Here, the unlawful sale appears institutionalized as staff attach the unlawful price of the reference number to the lawful cost of stage 1 of the license acquisition process.
325 for the first stage and 150 cedis for driving school slots.
Driving school slot, okay.
That is what we are going to use to get to an exact rate.
During payment, the investigator was asked to pay the stage 1 fee first, after which an official receipt was issued. The investigator was then directed to pay another official an additional 150 Ghana cedis for the reference number.
So you need the limit of 150.
Okay. But there's no number that I can call, or there's no need. Thank you.
After making both payments, the investigator was handed an official receipt. It had the legitimate cost of the stage 1 process printed. The 150 Ghana cedis paid for the reference number was handwritten on the same receipt. This investigation found that once the reference number is acquired right inside the premium office, the applicant skips enrolling into a driving school for the 10-day training. However, DVLA staff are able to produce this reference number and attendance record for a driving school he or she never attended. According to Mr. Kafui Semevo, Director of Driver Training, Testing and Licensing at DVLA, the reference number or driving school code is not supposed to be sold at DVLA or by DVLA officials.
So what you are calling the driving code is the application fee the person will be paying. But you are paying that fee to the driving school, not DVLA.
that number, you're not supposed to pay for it at DVLA?
No, because that is your registration number at the driving school, and you can only pay for registration to the driving school, not DVLA, because DVLA is not providing you that training. So DVLA is not even a user of the system, so I'll be surprised to know, and I'll even be interested to pursue that particular, if there is any evidence to that effect. Yeah.
Apart from the sale of the reference number at DVLA, some driving schools were also involved in outwitting the system to get applicants' licenses at DVLA without meeting the requirements. Corruption Watch's investigator visited the State Transport Company Driving School, the respected state-owned driving school, in pursuit of the driving school requirement of the DVLA.
And they said we should go to a driving school for driving school code. So until another
please, you will go down around. Is it license taken
After disclosing the purpose of the visit to the receptionist, she called an instructor on the phone and referred the investigator to him. Sharing the telephone number of the instructor, the receptionist advised the investigator to inform him she wanted an express service, which she said would attract more charges.
I think that one comes with an extra cost.
Investigator called the instructor as advised and made an offer of 1,300 Ghana cedis to get her the license in a week without getting through any of the required tests. The instructor also explained what the receptionist meant by express service.
Your friends, your license, nearly 1 week, but you're 1,300. Then 1 month, they're 1,001. Yes. Yeah, you've been a normal one, say 800. And you know, you're the sort of officers in it, like home passing through that space. It is one touch.
And to say exams, no, make 1,003 now, exams, no mean true.
No exams, nothing. You will not do this, we just need your biometrics and your information in the data, that's all. Then we just give you, and you get the card itself. You get the driver's license card.
The instructor set a date to meet the investigator to start the process. And this meeting happened at the STC driving school, where he explicitly made his offer.
That's all. Do what you need at once.
Because or in that and it's irreversible. No, the signals were just one discount. And yes, what we did, but it's what for Canada is who and I'm going
to that's all.
The instructor then took the investigator to the 37 office, where he received payment for the illicit deal and took the investigator through the capturing process. One week later, the investigator received the license as promised. When the managing director of Intercity STC Coaches Limited, Nana Akumia, was confronted with the actions of a member of his staff, he described the offer as unlawful and outlined the official process.
I must commend your outfit, Corruption Watch, for the work that you have done. It is through such undercover investigative work that the system can be corrected and improved. And I'm very happy that he came here and did his work. It will allow us to put corrective measures. And I've seen the evidence that you have. The union leader was here, the head of technical was here. We've seen the evidence, and we're very happy about it. So we would commence disciplinary proceedings against the individuals at the driving school that you identified. And I expect that a maximum penalty will apply.
The managing director described the negative implication of his staff members' illicit action. He assured that disciplinary action will be taken immediately.
Road safety begins with the driver. That's the first, the human material on the road before the mechanical sides can be put. So if the man or the woman in charge of the vehicle obtain their license through an unapproved route, it's got huge implications for road safety. That is, an unqualified person is operating machinery on the road, and certainly that has major road safety implications. So apart from the people stealing money from the company, because the monies that will be paid for the illegal route goes to into their pockets. Apart from that, they also risk damaging the reputation of the state.
This investigation established that officials involved use gaps in the official license acquisition process, deceit, greed, and fraud to sway applicants into acquiring the license using their corrupt ways, disregarding verification and validation of applicants and its implication on road safety. In 2012, DVLA, in an effort to fight the rot in the examination process at the time, introduced the computerized theory examination.
So when we started the theory test, that was way back in 2003, it was paper-based. Now, the leakages, credibility of the test was at stake. So people could go in there, and by the time you realize, because you are shading, once the invigilator loses sight of something, somebody can exchange answers and those things. There were a lot of, challenges with the paper-based. So that is what informed us introducing technology.
This investigation, however, established that the computerized examination had shortcomings, which became a barrier for license acquisition for a large section of the public who can neither read nor write the English language, as well as those who can read and write English but are not computer literate, a challenge the DVLA acknowledges. In an interview with Godfred Abulbire, General Secretary of the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, he disclosed that 95% of their 7,100 registered drivers are not computer literate and so cannot even sit, let alone pass, a computerized examination. The union has hence called for the computerized exams to be abolished.
When you are talking about the educational background of our members, yes, then we can say that we have about 20% nationwide who are educated, and we have about 80% who are not educated, and 20% are educated. We have some other persons who have completed school and have passed through certain stages, but they cannot even boot a computer on. Yes, I can tell you, we have about 5% of them who can actually do it, but the rest, like I said, don't even have the formal education, so they will not be able to boot a computer on, let alone to be able to use it.
The Corruption Watch investigator found that due to the barrier created with the introduction of the computerized examination, some officials of DVLA have taken advantage of the gap to enrich themselves by illegally assisting applicants to outwit the system, doing all the illicit offer similar services at slightly different rates. The only difference in their mode of operation was that the officials at 37 require their applicants to be physically present for the computerized examination, albeit an official will answer the questions on their behalf. The first DVLA official, immediately after receiving the illicit payment of 1,200 Ghana cedis, vacated his seat and personally took the investigator round from one office to the other to capture his biodata. The investigator did not enroll in any driving school, but got a reference number to sit the computerized examination. On the day of the computerized examination, the Corruption Watch agent reported to the official, who gave him documents containing his registration details. Behind these papers, stapled together, was a handwritten name. The official asked the investigator to show this name to the examiner and he would be taken care of.
Here you go. Show this to the guy. Okay. So tell him to check his inbox. Your name is...
The examiner checked the back of the document the moment they were handed to him. The Corruption Watch agent was offered a seat and asked not to touch anything. Minutes later, he returned and pretended to set up the computer for the exam, when in reality, he was answering all the questions on behalf of the Corruption Watch agent. The whole process took 1 minute, 45 seconds, instead of the 30-minute duration of the exam. The agent scored 85%.
Yes, I'm coming. Don't do anything, I'm coming.
The Corruption Watch agent was not made to take an in-traffic test, also known as the driving test. There was no road sign test either, but a driver's license was issued. In the case of the second DVLA official, the investigator visited the client service section of the 37 office to inquire about license acquisition. After the response of the official, the investigator asked whether there was no alternative to the computerized exams, to which the official responded by handing the investigator a piece of paper with his name and phone number, asking the investigator to call him after work. The investigator called the official days later, and the official disclosed he could aid the investigator to circumvent the system at the cost of 1,500 Ghana cedis.
Hello? Hello. Yeah, boss, good evening. Yeah, please, am I speaking to Fifi? I was at your office last week and you asked me to call you.
If you pay the 1,000, if you are paying the 1,000 for that, that means you are leaving it for them to do everything for you.
Aside from using the state-owned facility for private gains, some of these officials at DVLA employ the services of agents, who they refer applicants to after a deal has been struck. These agents then work with DVLA staff in other departments to break the rules. The investigator made part payment, and the official, whose role at the client service section prevented him from vacating his seat, introduced the investigator to another gentleman to take the investigator through the process. The agent took the applicant to another gentleman, who he introduced as the driving school agent, to produce the driving school code for the applicant who had not attended the driving school. He then took the applicant swiftly through the process, jumping queues and bending the rules amidst fights with other unassisted applicants who had been sitting in the queue all day, although the public address system at the premises of the DVLA repeatedly states clearly that applicants are to deal only with the staff of the authority and go through the right processes. The gaps in the system, as well as the deceit of some officials, make the instructions redundant. Apart from the differences in the prices of both DVLA officials, the services offered remained the same. Later, the investigator texted the official to inquire about the in-traffic and road sign tests. He was informed they had all been taken care of. Weeks later, the investigator received a genuine license without ever sitting any exams. Tamale DVLA office is very calm, less busy, and looks nothing like the Accra office. After days of surfing the facility, a spot was identified as the fastest point to pull a deal. The deal was swift. At this point, the investigation had established a trend of different people from different DVLA offices charging similar prices for their illicit services. Here, the errand boy does the deal while his boss pretends not to be aware of what is happening right in front of him. The boss only steps in when it is time to bargain. According to the agent, failure of the computerized exams is inevitable, insisting that even professors fail.
Yeah, so then we went to some No. Why would I try?
He charged 1,500 Ghana cedis, which was to be paid in full for express service. When the investigator insisted on a reduction, the errand boy referred the issue to his boss, who, according to him, had the final say.
So we're asking that if we could pay the 1,000, then probably by tomorrow morning we'll be able to pay the rest.
It's not sister, it's a sister. So when you pay, it has a lot of challenges. There are so many ways doing it. If you want the one you are talking about, that you want to pay the 1,000 to them, it will buy 1 month. You can pay the half, but the following when you have to complete it, you can pay the rest.
Okay.
But what I don't know, the one you actually want.
That they wanted it fast.
The moment the payment was made to the errand boy, his boss immediately vacated his seat and asked the Corruption Watch agent to follow him to start the process. The arrangement was the same as the offers in Accra. The applicant skips every process after paying. There was, however, a difference in the waiting time for the temporary license in this case. Another difference in Tamale was that the investigator did not even have to be present in the exam room to pretend to be writing the exams. Everything was done in his absence by the DVLA officials. COP Ebenezer Francis Doku, Director General of the Motor Traffic and Transport Department of the Ghana Police Service, disclosed that it is the responsibility of the DVLA to ensure the system is not corrupted, as the MTTD is unable to identify which driver acquired his license through unlawful means once the license is found to be genuine.
If it turns out that the license is genuine, of course, it is not our duty to trace how the driver got his license. We are interested in the genuineness of the license. Yeah.
It is important to note that among the officials encountered in the two regions, only one of the Tamale office officials, Stephen Akom, stood out. He was the only DVLA official who refused to accept anything apart from the official laid-down process and cost. Even when the investigator asked for alternatives, he insisted the license could not be acquired without going through all of the tests required by law. Corruption Watch's investigation has clearly shown that both the DVLA and the driving schools have to take corrective action to address corruption in the driver's license acquisition process, to prevent unqualified drivers from operating vehicles on our roads, which invariably lead to avoidable road accidents and the resultant fatalities. In the case of the language barrier with the exams, which has made it impossible for applicants who don't speak, read, or write English to sit the exam and sometimes use a proxy, it is assuring that the DVLA says it intends to introduce voiceovers for the computerized examination questions in 5 different local languages.
We always ask the question, what will encourage an applicant, for instance, to not want to follow the process? One of them we realized was, if the person left home and came to your office and everything is in English, that person wants to obtain the service the right way, but there is a barrier. How do you take the barrier away? Okay, and sometimes we engage people who have tried to obtain service and have not been successful. We try to understand what the needs are, so we incorporate it in our reform, and that is why this particular upgrade is very, very important to us.
It has been 10 years and counting since that solution was suggested, but there still is no specific timeline for implementation. Authorities say they continue to work towards addressing the lapses in the system. But as long as there remains a lack of integrity in the driver licensing regime, road users must exercise caution on the roads to reduce escalating road accidents and deaths. This has been a Francisca Enchil report.
And that was the Money Over Human Lives Corruption Watch expose. Let's learn a little bit more about this. Jeffrey Okansi is Executive Director for Revenue Mobilization Africa. And we also have on the phone Mr. Samuel Amwa, who is a member of the GPRTU communications team. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for having us. Indeed. I think I'd like to start with Mr. Amwa of the GPRTU. We saw your colleague admit in this documentary that 95% of GPRTU's drivers would be unable to sit, let alone pass, the computerized test. Is this the same as admitting that 95% of GPRTU drivers, drivers of commercial vehicles in this country, are most likely unqualified to drive? Right, okay, we'll reconnect with Mr. Samuel Amwa shortly. But I want to take your thoughts, Mr. Okansi, Executive Director of Revenue Mobilization Africa. I mean, talk us through your impressions of this documentary.
Well, it's been a wonderful expose once again. This should tell us what has been the problem with our DVLA licensing system. I think, like you've rightly said, it's one the causes are some of the issues that I've listed here. Complicated application processes, which starts with even the language, understanding what language to use to apply for such a system. In a country where majority of the people do not have access to quality education, and you have difficulty speaking the English language, I think it becomes very complicated when about 80% or more of our Ghanaian drivers in the commercial sector, especially even in the private sector, would not have access to education. So they'll have difficulty applying. That is not an excuse on their part, though, because if you have a difficulty in the language, you could engage somebody to interpret for you. but at a cost anyway. That's also another problem. And then you also look at the issue of weak supervision and poor monitoring, which gave way for people to manipulate the systems and take advantage of the system. The system challenge, the system itself had a challenge for the employee to be able to take advantage of it in just about 2 minutes and do such an evil to the country is also very worrying. And then also an issue of indisciplined personnel, the moral standards, the falling moral standards. Everybody wants to get rich overnight, you know, and then you'll be surprised we still have education, taking care of religious and moral education. Still, we have standards still falling. I think one of the final things to talk about the causes is poor punitive measures. After they have engaged in such, sometimes the offenders are only transferred as a form of punishment, which I think is a motivation for the offender. Instead of recouping the money and sometimes maybe getting to the level of demoting the officer and then going to the next level of maybe ensuring that you interdict such an officer for some months, the officer is only transferred, which I think is just another motivation for the officer.
One of the obvious effects of corruption in public institutions is the leakage and the cost to government. Now here we see officers who are charging the correct legal fees, but also charging something on top of that. Talk to us, why should government be interested in plugging such a leakage? Okay, we'll reconnect with revenue, the organization shortly, Mr. Okansi. But first, Samuel Amwa is a member of GPRTU. Mr. Amwa, thank you for your time with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm very interested in what your colleague said to us in the documentary. I mean, in fact, that was you. Sorry, that was your colleague who explained that 95% of GPRTU drivers are not capable of sitting the computerized test. Since the computerized test is a mandatory requirement for driving in Ghana, is that accurate to say that 95% of commercial drivers in this country are not qualified to drive?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me say good afternoon to your viewers out there. Yes, if I may hear my colleague very well, I think the question thrown to him was about this computer, testing, or the computer question that you have to undergo before you acquire the driver's license. And then he was also explaining where we also come from. If I say we also come from, most of the drivers, the majority of the drivers, where they are coming from, their educational background. And computer, we understand now almost everything is being computerized. But, it's not every driver that has the computer, that is computer literate or maybe knows something about computers. And that is what he was saying, that about 90 to 95 drivers, or if I may put it this way, GPRTU drivers, have a lesser or a less idea about this computer system. I think that was what he was referring to.
Well, Mr. Amwa, I think we heard him quite clearly. He said that only 5% of them will even know how to boot a computer, will even know how to switch it on. I think that is definitive. It doesn't require translation. If only 5% of your members can switch on a computer, that means only 5% of your members can sit a computerized exam. And since computerized exam is a requirement to drive in this country legally, does that not mean that 95% of your members cannot be legally qualified to drive?
Yes, you see, let me take you back a little bit. We all acquire licenses. Like myself, I acquired my license way back in 1992, and this computer system wasn't there. And when this computer system was introducing, our leadership, we said something about it. We spoke about it, how it's going to affect, most of our drivers, because, some years back, most of the drivers say will be some people that are not literate, some are dropouts from schools and all that. So this system that they brought, that unless the person undergo a computer, a computer training or a computer, pass through a computer test before the person can be, issued a driver's license, became a little challenge. I believe that is the main reason why all these leakages and all this corruption is also going on, because they know very well that this system will create a loophole. And it will also encourage people to be, to be taking money or to be extorting money from other people. Gone are the days they have the system was clear before one will undergo one will acquire license. The person will be taken to a driving test. He will be taken to what do you call it? A test, other test before without this computer system test. I get it. So this time that all these things has come up now, it's very difficult for somebody who just dropped out from school and want to be a driver. The person will go through the driving test and all that. But the computer thing has been a problem. I think that is what my genius was trying to let them understand. That is the problem we, the drivers, most of us are facing now.
So how do you overcome that problem? How have you been overcoming that problem in the past?
Yes, I believe, I believe, if you ask me myself, when these things were introduced, they introduced these things, this computer system thing, we all spoke against it. Because, yes, it's a way of maybe trying to get a trained driver or a qualified driver.
Mr. Amwa, what I'm asking is, today, when a GPRTU driver goes to seek his driver's license, and we know the path through which many people become drivers. So sometimes you start off as a driver's mate, and then you learn how to drive, and then you become a driver. So when your members are going through this process, and it gets to the point where they must go and sit the test for the license, how do they overcome the obstacle of the computerized test? What do they do?
Yes, I believe that is the process they are supposed to go through. That you are to, and I believe myself, I acquired my license way back before this computer system was introduced. So
let's talk about what they do since the system was introduced. What do your members do?
Come again?
Since the system was introduced, what do your members now do?
Yes, most of them go through all this system, but most of them too sometimes, because of this computer thing, sometimes fail. That is why, all these things, they may try to, pay extra money to get this license just because he knows I'm a qualified, I've gone through, I've undergo training, apprenticeship for about 3 years before, being a driver and all that. But it's only the computer system that maybe is going to disqualify the person or something of that sort. That is why,
so they have been paying.
Those people out there too are finding a way of getting money from them for them to acquire these licenses. And I don't think...
So they have been paying for their licenses?
Come again.
So they have been paying for their licenses?
Hello, come again, please.
So they have been paying for their licenses since the computerized system was introduced?
Yeah, you see, I was saying that some of them can go through it and they pass, and some too cannot go through it. That is why all these things are coming in. You won't get it 100%. I get it. You won't get it 100%. And it's not all the drivers too that have this computer, background, before going through this test. That is why, it happens like that.
From you, and also look at the way forward. So if you stay with us, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue this conversation. You're welcome back. This is The Pulse, and of course, we've just experienced the Corruption Watch documentary, which exposed DVLA officials taking money to allow prospective drivers circumvent the processes, jump all the tests, and receive valid driving licenses. Jeffrey Okansi is the Executive Director of Revenue Mobilization Africa. He's joining us via Zoom. Jeffrey, before the break, I was interested in your take on the fact that these particular officials who are exposed in this documentary are charging, first of all, unauthorized fees and allowing people to circumvent the laid down procedures which would have come with authorized fees. Explain how, in addition to this costing lives, it's also costing government revenue.
Hello.
Yes, Jeffrey, please go ahead.
Yes, you know, majority of these people who are going there also access healthcare, and when they go to the hospitals, these same challenges are available. Some doctors do not speak the languages they speak. It is the work of interpreters who actually help them to address these issues with their doctors. So I think it is a challenge we all accept, but it shouldn't be a justification for people to actually take advantage of a system and pay bribes to officials. Government is losing a lot of revenue through this channel because you watch the documentary with me. Look at the number of people who are going to an individual who is pocketing all these monies. That should tell you that we have seen X amount of people doing it. What about the number of times people go there and undertake such activities that we don't have account of? Clearly, you can see that we are losing hoops of money. And this was just Tamale and Accra. What about the other regions that maybe we will have such cases on the high? And even in Accra, like I told you, there may be others who would not even actually be caught by this cameras. So it should tell you the hoop number of people that are on the streets holding licenses who are not really tested. The implications, the cost implications, not only the revenue that directly goes to, we're expecting to go to government, but also the accidents like you mentioned, you know, the loss of lives and the cost of actually managing these losses that come with accidents. They all relate to this problem. Because if somebody, you are driving your expensive vehicle and a driver who was not well trained runs into you, that cost that comes of that accident is as a result of this unfortunate incident. And all these could be added on, but then you don't have direct information to know whether that driver who caused that accident was one of this group of drivers we are talking about. But if you could just X an amount and add to all these losses, then you can know the total rough amount that we are losing. I think that the way forward for such a practice that to be kept down is to improve our systems, to ensure that some of these unprofessional attitudes of these personnel will be kept down. Also, let's encourage investigators like our lady Francisca and other investigators and the team that undertook this exercise and your outfit for supporting such a wonderful job. Let's encourage their work by providing some materials and ensuring that they also have the encouragement to do more. We should also engage state institutions and investigators like the CID department, the Serious Fraud Office, which is now Yoko, and other officials to come on board to collaborate with these investigators to really nip this practice in the bud. We should also recoup the lost funds. As we've had all this going on, such officials should be picked up. A very good forensic should be done so that we recoup the monies that have been stolen from the state. This is where passionately Revenue Mobilization Africa, we are very passionate about how to recoup the stolen monies and then also to organize periodic checks. This shouldn't be a one-day of activity. We should rather encourage the collaboration and then periodically organize that swoops and clampdowns so that we ensure that we are actually sieving out and sipping out these very, very, very unwanted personnel who are really letting the system down. Now, let's also encourage the localization of the system. As part of redoing the system, we should look forward to localizing the system. But my brother, you would agree with me that we cannot do even all the local languages in Ghana. So we'll be doing maybe the majority flowing ones, like maybe Hausa, Ewe, Ga, Chi, and then the major ones, about 5 of them. Will it also mean that those who do not speak any of these would also have to encourage corruption? The issues about corruption, let's not run and hide. You know, I understand what the GPRTU senior official said. I think rather they should look at how to collaborate with the DVLA and then also some language experts to develop some softwares that can interpret the language, you know, to these other groups. They are not the only ones. I'm sure there are other Ghanaians who are engaged in this practice, you know, and so we should look at it in entirety, but majority of their drivers, like he accepts, you know, it's an education problem. There's a gap in education. That is where the problem is. Let's improve the system and encourage them to also, you know, have interpreters. The GPRT is an association. Once they've identified this problem, they should get interpreters to organize with the DVLA so that they will organize some special sessions for these members of theirs who have that challenge of language. But the problem is corruption, and we need to fight it. My problem is to recoup my money. I mean, those who are actually engaged in this practice, the punitive measures, another very serious area. You don't only just transfer somebody like this who engages in such practice, or you only demote the person. It doesn't solve the problem. Recoup the money. It is about time, Ghana. Let us all, media, all of us citizens, let's call for the recouping of the monies. When such happens,
Jeffrey,
let's get the people to pay back what they've stolen from the state.
Yeah, Jeffrey, how much of the blame should the institution take? And the reason why I ask this is because this documentary exposes individuals who, in spite of a proper laid down procedure, are doing the wrong thing. But how much blame should we place at the doorstep of the institution that is unable to police its people, and that has overseen the creation of this strange arbitrage where it is now actually inconvenient to do the right thing, and the best way to get your license is by doing the wrong thing? How much of this is on the doorstep of the DVLA as an institution?
I think they should take about 80% of the blame. Talking about the system itself, how on earth did you also bring a system knowing very well? I mean, over the years, we've had people applying for DVLA license, driver's license, and some of these challenges are not new. So when you are trying to bring an improved system, you should have checked the language used in such a system, and so they should take the blame. The majority of the blame should go to them. One technical and very important one is weak supervision. Right at the doorstep in their building, the official was able to actually get into the system with a human interference and get their cameras there. There should have been cameras there to capture this one, because our investigator was able to take the cameras there and capture this one. So how come you can have such an examination? How much will it cost you to have cameras in the exam hall? This was the least they could have done was to provide cameras in such an examination hall. So the biggest blame, I mean, if on the side of policing, that is monitoring and supervision, I would score them 10 over 100. They did not do, they left their doors ajar. This is the most simplest form of getting to check the system. To have a camera that would monitor who are writing the examination was the least of all they could have gotten for us. And it was a special day. It wasn't as if they would take the exam for days or weeks. I mean, it was one-off event for about 30 minutes. In an hour, you couldn't have told us anything else, that you couldn't get cameras to monitor that examination hall. I think they should take the blame. And like you rightly asked, what is the next action? The action shouldn't be the offender alone. Who supervised the offender should also be put into this one. Somebody must be interdicted, and somebody must be investigated. It cannot be only this gentleman who actually took the monies. Somebody else aided. You saw how it jumped from the junior officer to the superior. It didn't end with this superior officer. I think it goes further. And that's why I'm saying there should be a collaboration between the investigator over here and other state investigative agencies to make sure we nip this practice in the bud. I mean, we need to go further. It doesn't end with this one. And the authorities must take the blame.
Very much, Jeffrey, for the time you've spent with us. Very enlightening. We appreciate you. Jeffrey Okansi is Executive Director of Revenue Mobilization Africa.